This video is about people who are saving money. It's the average person trying to save money. They're trying to be in a decent position and try and obviously make money and being able to save it and diversify where they place their money. You know, we're in a climate right now, and obviously the climate, we know what it is. It's challenging, but this is irrespective of any climate, I guess. You're going to always have to be in a position to save money and, you know, do what you can within, you know, your lifetime, and obviously try and hit milestones, save and do what's required, and obviously put it in places that will help your daily and also, you know, future potential living. Yeah, it's the average person. You got a couple, you have young women, young men, and just people who are living in society trying to make it happen. So if you like the video, please. It helps spread. And also, I'm going to have some commentary in between. So let's get into it.
If you want to save a fat chunk of money in a small amount of time, watch this freaking video. I went from living off £150 a month to now saving over £8,000 in 5 months whilst in full-time education. Your first tip is to learn about investing. I started investing the day I turned 18, and I now have £3,000 in my investing account. £1,000 of that is just from returns. So I've actually only put in £2,000 of my own money, and I've got £1,000 back for free, basically. If you want a video on how I did that, please let me know, because I will do one of those, and I'm not one of those day trading teenage boys that think they know what they're doing. Research credit and debit cards for your life, like this is lasting. I have 4 credit cards and 5 debit cards, and I use them all. Different cards will give you different benefits. My Amex card gives me travel points. My trading 2-on-2 card gives me 1.5% cash back, automatically invested after every single purchase. So research your credit and debit cards very well before you apply for any of them. If you want a video on what cards I have and what accounts I have open, then let me know, because I can do that as well. Sign up for a lifetime ISA if that's what you want to do, and save up for a house. Obviously that's only really if you want to save up for a house, but you get 25% bonus on everything that you put in yourself. So automatically £4,000 is automatically turned into £5,000 basically overnight. Get a freaking side hustle. Genuinely don't know how people in the UK are living without a side hustle, if I'm being completely honest with you. I've had a side hustle since I pretty much started working at 14 years old. I had an ongoing brand deal with a brand for 3 years, and they paid me $300 every single month for posting 1 Instagram story. Seriously, why aren't you doing it? Budget your motherfucking money like it's your life. Put your money into pots every single month and know what you're spending your money on. I gave myself £100 a month to spend on miscellaneous stuff. That was like coffees, clothes, shoes, anything. If I needed to go to the shop and I wanted some food that I wanted that wasn't necessity, it came out of that money. Then at the end of putting all the money into the pots, I knew exactly what I had to put into savings, and I just put it straight into savings and never touched it again.
This young girl's doing well. She's smart. She's a teenager, student. She's managing to work as well as save and diversify her finances. So she's showing that, look, it's possible to pick a certain path and then obviously, as she said, research and find out what is beneficial when it comes to cash ISAs. Then it obviously comes to the trading aspect of things. You know, she's obviously showed the ability to be able to have compound interest with her trading, you know, decision that she put herself into. And yeah, she's showing smarts. So students, even if, you know what I mean, you're young, there's ways that, and I'm sure there's many others, but there's ways that, you know, you can try and maintain as much as you can. It's just the fact that when it gets to this point where she's had credit cards and debit cards, you have to obviously pick what you believe is best for you, and also know why you're using, you know, certain credit cards, for example. Obviously, if you want to improve your standing and your credit rating, and, you know, look obviously good on paper, so when you're moving forward in life, you can be able to get favorable opportunities within potentially taking loans if you seem to feel that's needed, or doing any kind of certain projects, you know, that will involve finance, you know. So yeah, she's showing smarts, and I give her credit for it. I've also got another clip as well, so we're going to get into that one. And this one is also about how she saved a certain amount within a certain time frame. So she had obviously an objective, and she documents how she was able to save and achieve that goal that she had.
The things I did in my early 20s to save money weren't glamorous, but they got me my first property deal. So let me share some of the raw ways I was able to save. 1, I paid my future self first. One of the first things I did was stop seeing my income as money fully available to spend. So when my salary had landed, I would transfer a percentage to a separate bank account. In my head, once that money had moved, it wasn't mine to spend anymore, which leads on to my next point. I treated my savings like debt. If I ever dipped into my savings, I would pay myself back the following month, as well as that month's worth of saving. Even if I needed to cut back on expenses or plans, so be it, because that mindset alone stopped me from casually touching it. 3, increasing my income. Now, if you know me personally, then you'll remember the nail embassy. During lockdown, I taught myself how to do nails out of pure boredom. And when that started bringing in money, I'd live off that. Or I'd use it to cover some of my fixed expenses so that my salary could be saved. There was literally a period in my life where I was corporate girly by day, entrepreneur by night. 4, having accountability. If you're Nigerian or African in general, then you already know your parents will ask you how much you have saved. I remember telling my mum after a year of working in corporate that I had no savings. From that point, she made me transfer 30% of my salary every month. It wasn't cute, but it sure did teach me discipline. The truth is, discipline is a lot less glamorous than people think, but it will always be the small habits compounded over time that lead to success.
That's another one with a strategy as well. She had obviously her ways of doing it. She even had to pay her mum because she was spending. You know, sometimes when you get into the money and, you know, you're getting your monthly or your weekly salary, whatever it is, and you start seeing it there, you're thinking, oh, but I've covered certain things I need to cover for the month. But you start getting into the point where you start slacking off and start buying things that are unnecessary. Something like that, where you have someone, you know, making you accountable, can help as well. But ultimately, you got to make yourself accountable and make things easier. The aim is comfort. That's what a lot of people want. If they can pay every single thing they pay per month and be comfortable in a position where they can see something substantial, then most people will be in a way content. But it's the check living aspects that get people in a problem, and that's where the sort of gripes take place. You know, being in a position where it's challenging in that regard. But there's also ways to look at it. Like I say, she's made her assessments about being accountable and obviously paying herself. And then, yeah, looking at it just from a realistic standpoint of, okay, if you're not doing certain things to help yourself, then how's it going to work? You know, if you have to be on a 6-month, 9-month period of not spending a certain way, whether it's you going out less, you know, whether it's you purposely meal prepping if you work, you know, and you're not spending on silly rubbish food all the time outside. You know, not saying you can't have your 1 or 2 days in a week to do that, but you have to look at it from what is more vital. You know, when you start in anything, you have to always be in a position where you can maintain. That's what I've realized. Starting something, can I actually manage this? And what is making me be able to manage what I've started or what I'm doing? You know, if something was to happen, you know, out of the blue. So you got to think just a little bit further. That's what I've realized. And that's what it seemed she was able to do. Think down the line of, okay, what could potentially happen? So I'm not in a position to, you know, be in a muddle, because her mum was like, look, you need to do something. Give me your money, 30% of it, and I'll put it away and do what's required. So some people may not have that, but you just have to have your own accountability. So it makes it easier for you.
For anyone that is struggling to figure out how to actually start saving, this is how I started saving in plain English, the very basics on how to start to save. Guys, girls, I know a lot of you are tired of seeing 100% come in and then 100% comes out. You just spending, but not having a penny to your name. Before anything, you need to get into the mindset that I am not a consumer anymore. You need to understand that you cannot keep spending everything that you're making. You need to understand the essence of being a bit frugal and being able to budget. It's not everything that you must have there needs to be some understanding of delayed gratification if you want to be able to save. First, I worked out the percentage of fixed costs that come out of my salary income, however I make money. And then I worked out how much on average I spend per month. Then I worked backwards from there. Second, I was able to identify, for example, that 65% of my salary income goes into costs that are fixed every single month. 20% goes into expenses for me to live that month. So that left me with 15%, I think I've done the maths right, 15% left that I had that was unaccounted for. Then I've identified saving goals. So what were the things that I wanted to achieve in the next 4 to 5, 6 years? For example, could be a baby, could be a wedding, could be a house, could be a car, could be a holiday, whatever it may be. I identified those saving goals. Then I identified saving vehicles / investment vehicles that could help me achieve those goals. Then with the 15%, I allocated that money into different savings and investment vehicles, such as high interest savings accounts, stocks and shares portfolio, so on and so forth. And I was able to divide that 15% into different areas depending on prioritization. So for example, if my house was the highest priority, then I'll put 10% out of the 15% into the house fund. Then wedding, if the wedding was the next priority, then maybe 3%. And then maybe car, the next priority, that will be 2%. Then I tracked on an Excel spreadsheet. You can use whatever system or application that you want to use to track month by month how much I'm depositing in each savings pot and how much interest and dividends and returns I'm making per month on each savings pot. And then I tracked that month by month until I could see how far or how close I was to my savings goal for the year. And then the more money that I was putting into my savings and investment pots, the more that the interest was compounding and the more money that I was seeing in my savings.
Very good plan. I think he documented it pretty clearly, was able to show the process and obviously document how he was monitoring things, because that's another key thing as well. Sometimes you're doing something and you're thinking, okay, yeah, no, I've got what I've got in there. I should be able to, do what I need to do in other areas. Maybe, you may get a little bit slack in your tracking and then you may dip into much in what, you're actually doing. You may dip into it a bit too much. But when you keep track and you again, make yourself accountable, you're able to at least, and look, even if you were to dip in and do a crazy one, in 1 month, you're able to at least replenish it and be accountable to replenish it the following month. So there are ways to be able to mitigate issues. But once you've got a plan like that where you're, documenting and monitoring everything you do, then it does make it easier. And I think that's what he was also, showing as well, how easy it became. That's how it sounded to me anyway, when he was monitoring it and when he had obviously the understanding of where his money was placed. But yeah, another one. So there are ways to navigate, So every time you come up with any kind of, blocks or anything like that, there are ways to navigate. There are ways to be in a decent position. And this is a prime example of it. He had a goal. I was able to achieve it just based on his ability to plan, and then obviously monitor and then, see where he was progressing. And obviously once you keep progressing, that's where you feel like, yeah, I'm getting to it now. Once you see the progress, when you're seeing those small incrementals, it's a good feeling. So that's what is also important as well. Once you see the steps actually bearing fruit, that's when you're like, okay, cool, let me continue this, And I think that's what he showed. But yeah, we've got another clip now where a guy explains how he was able to save $1,000 a month. He had a little process as well, which I thought is something that you can maybe look into and take some maybe pieces of it. So let's get into it.
I often get asked how I've managed to save consistently well over £1,000 for over the last year as someone who is on a really normal wage, who is 24 and is trying to still live his life and do all the things that a normal 20-year-old wants to do. And these are the three things that have really helped me. Number one is not spending any money in the week. I fill my car up with petrol and I do my food shopping at the weekend. And then in the week, I don't spend any money unless it is absolutely necessary. I'd rather save my money for the weekend. That way I can socialise with friends still and I can afford to do all the social activities that I want to do. Number two is really sitting down and working out what your priorities are. At the end of the day, if you want to save large amounts of money, you can't do everything. So you need to sit down and work out what's important to you and what you want to spend your money on, and cut out anything that isn't really important to you, because that's just a waste of money. Finally is probably the most important one, and that is paying yourself first. As soon as I get paid, I have direct debit set up so my money goes straight away into my savings account.
With that guy, he's a young guy. So he's also showing you that, look, you can still go out and have your, you shake a leg and have your little fun here and there, But he did say he would rather not spend in the week. So his general day-to-day, he would rather wait to the weekend. I'm sure if there was an emergency, he had to spend something, he would do it in the weekday. But that's his little plan of being accountable, saying, look, I'm not going to spend such and such. I'm just going to do meal plan and do what's required in that regard. I'm going to buy as much ingredients as I can, as opposed to buying one meal when I'm outside, and sometimes it's £10 or it's $10 wherever you are in the world. You could be spending 10, 12, 13, 14 pounds per day sometimes on food, depending where you work. If you're in like deeper, city, central parts of London, for example, yeah, you're going to be paying, a substantial amount. And you see the food is not even that worth it anyway. And in more time, you'll end up eating rubbish. If you want to have something a little bit cheaper, you end up eating a lot of junk. But this one, he said, look, I'm going to wait till the weekend. And then obviously I can, socialize and do what he needs to do with his friends. So there's different types of people with different ways of doing things here. So it's just obviously picking out the differences and seeing what makes sense. And then obviously looking at it from a logical standpoint and seeing that, look, different people are doing different things to try and obviously help their situations and help, their existence. And I think with what he was saying was smart as well. He's just looking at it like, look, I have a goal, £1,000 a month he was able to save. This is what I'm going to do. Again, you don't have to push yourself to a point where you're not able to always achieve it, and then you start putting pressure on yourself, and then you start maybe say, forget this, and then you start indulging too much. Sometimes it's, look, you may not meet the £1,000 requirement or whatever certain requirement a month. Just look at it onto the next month. Let's see what we can do to, improve something or mitigate something. And I think that's another thing as well, because sometimes people feel that, I'm sure, that they feel that, they can't do certain things. It's okay, yeah, you can start small. At least train yourself, train that mentality to be able to start small, and then obviously be able to have a plan that you can say, okay, now I'm going to maybe try and increase it to whatever level I can sustain. But I think it's smart, and I think he has a good plan. But let's get into another one.
It does work as someone who started this journey on a low salary. The first thing you're going to start doing is tracking your money. So you just need to know what's coming in, what's going out, have a good picture of that. Some people use budgeting apps, some people use Excel spreadsheets, because you can't improve or save what you don't track. But then we're not just going to leave that money in a regular current bank account, because then the value of that money is actually going to start to go down because of inflation. So we need to put that money where it's getting some sort of interest. Ideally, you actually want to be investing this money in something quite safe. But if you're not investing yet and you don't really know about that and you're still learning about that, definitely make sure that money is at least in a high interest savings account. Ideally, you want to be investing, because that's basically the only way to beat inflation and even maybe actually make some money on top. But at this stage, a high interest savings account at the very least, especially if this is just an emergency fund, because then this is how you start to take advantage of compound interest. And I definitely don't see enough people talking about the fact that actually increasing your income should be part of your strategy for saving money. Because when I started saving for my first £10,000, part of my strategy was making sure I moved jobs, and I was able to negotiate a £12,000 pay rise from one job to another, and that significantly helped me to hit my savings goal a lot quicker. These reliable steps are literally how most normal people that weren't born into wealth or have money waiting for them anywhere are able to start to build their finances up and reach those milestones and start to buy their freedom by learning how to save. It's not a get rich quick scheme.
The point she made about normal people being able to get to a point where, they have a substantial amount or a good amount, for example, was key, because she made it clear that, look, it's not someone that you're looking at who has a silver spoon in her mouth, more or less. She's, the average person being able to have a strategy, and it worked. But the key thing also for me was the whole increase in your income, being able to be in a position, or whether it's a job or whatever you have going, whether it's a business, being able to increase that income amount, because it's all good being able to have a strategy and save a certain amount. You would want to start at a certain point, like I was saying earlier about starting at a certain point and working your way up, even if it's a small amount, but also to help the process in a more streamlined way. That's where the salary aspect has to come into it, because that's where you're really making the moves that, do you know what I mean, are really fruitful. Because if you're not able to increase that salary, sometimes it's just, So you want to be able to be in that position to move jobs, because they do say sometimes, a lot of the time, being in a position for like 2 to 3 years, then you move on from your job if you obviously are not able to increase your salary. So that whole 2-year sort of mark is generally on average where people are able to increase salaries. Now, that's not to say other people haven't done it, being at a position longer, but generally on average, they say being in a position for 2 years, then you're able to move on and then obviously increase your salary substantially based on obviously whatever you're doing and how you present.
Here is a breakdown of exactly how me and my partner saved £34,000 house deposit and also cleared £4,000 worth of credit card debt in 2 years. Just to clarify, we didn't have any sort of help or support from family or friends, which I know a lot of people have. But unfortunately, we weren't in a position for anyone to help. I feel like so many people are in the situation where they just don't have any help from anybody. It can be done. It just might take a little bit longer than those people who do get help. I would describe our wages as pretty average. Don't think either of us are like particularly high earners. Just starting off with our income. I should also say we're actually on less than this now since I'm currently on maternity. It is wild to me the affordability checks you have to pass to get more. But then once you get it, you go on maternity leave and your income halves and nobody bats an eyelid. Anyway, then these were our outgoings at the time. Our outgoings are much higher than this now because obviously with a mortgage you're usually paying significantly more. We also managed to find like the cheapest place on the market for renting. So that definitely helped with the cost. To be honest, the rest of this hasn't really changed actually, except our car finance has gone up because we had to get a new car. But cost-wise, everything else has pretty much stayed the same. Now onto other essential costs, but they were not necessarily fixed. So things like petrol, food and childcare. Our childcare bill will be slightly different every month. So that's why I put it on this slide. But this was like the rough amounts that we would spend on these things each month. And then finally, like the non-essential spending, so fun money basically. Although non-essential, it is still really important, I think, to treat yourself even when you're saving for a house. So that left us with £1,791 each month. Now, I would be lying if I said we saved every single penny of that. Obviously, if you work it out yourself and times it by 24, it equals £42,000. We saved £34,000, so we did the majority of it. Part of me thinks we could have saved a little bit more of that, to be honest with you. I think we saved roughly around like £1,400 a month to get to our £34,000 deposit in 2 years. But I also think it's really important to live a little bit even when you're saving for a house, like I said earlier. We still took holidays with our little boy when he was younger. And we still enjoyed days out and making memories as a family, so I definitely don't regret that.
Being able to plan together as people, being able to say, look, I'm not part of that conversation that is, oh, this man has to earn such and such before he gets with me. Look, they've made it happen. 4.5 or whatever it was, £4,000 plus per month coming in with their joint income. They're making it happen. Still have a child, still was able to go out and, facilitate, experiences for the child. So there are ways, sometimes we see a lot of stuff online that sounds a little bit too ridiculous about what women want and what men want. You have a general couple being able to make things happen. And that's what's happening. A lot of talk is cheap online, about perceptions, but they're making it happen and saying, look, this is what we did. They even said they could have probably saved more, but they probably also wanted to live a little, as they say. So for me, I think with this one, smart. The way she did it, the way she explained it, simple. She even had to obviously, I'm sure, do some proper research to be able to get a decent environment, for the amount that they paid, because to be able to pay that 34,000 as a down payment, then yeah, they had to really research. And I don't know if this is even in London. I'm sure not. It's not even worth even saying this if it's even in London. But just in general, where and how they did things, it made sense. They had the plan, and obviously, yeah, they were able to do it. But she did say, obviously, the income has, the outgoings have increased, at that time anyway, because obviously, she says she's paying a mortgage and certain things are a little bit more. And obviously, she said she was on maternity leave, but it's all possible to make it work, man. Because what else can one do if you're not going to try and come up with a plan? But sometimes the plan can, make people feel a little bit like too restricted. But you're going to have to be restricted for a period sometimes, man. You have to sometimes batten down the hatches and do what's required initially. Or when, you've saved a certain amount. So you know that if you was out of a job or you was out of some form of income for a period, you're good. You shouldn't be getting yourself into silly debts, silly kind of get rich quick schemes, not understanding where you're putting your money because you think you can try and do something on a quick move. Hey, if you manage to do that, hey, that's another video, but I'm talking about the people that just want to be consistent in a measured way. Delayed gratification is important, man. And not trying to live and keep up with any Joneses. You know what I mean? Because nobody really cares, man. Everyone's focused on what they got to do. People look at each other. Yes, they do. But people are focused on what they got to do. And as long as you've got your pockets covered, that's the key. But I also wanted to talk about, and just a brief explanation or brief overview about the comparison of savings between Generation Z, Generation X, baby boomers, silent generation, and millennials. The average savings. This is of a report, according to the Finders 2026 report, about the general average savings of each generation. And then obviously the percentage of each generation with no savings. And it's quite interesting because it says obviously baby boomers and silent generation have the most on average, which a lot of conversation online about baby boomers and what they didn't do for the economy, what they did in 2008 and how they had it a bit more easier with rates and favorable tax rates and being able to get a property at certain prices that even if you were to calculate today, it's nowhere near the average property in certain developed cities. So they are in a good position, generally on average. And obviously silent generation, those are some of the much more older men and women. But yeah, I think Gen Z is obvious, in average savings, they're still young, the age groups. And then obviously millennials, but millennials, that's where the challenge is, I think. The millennial average saving amount in the UK, that's where I think it needs to get to a point where, that gets improved somehow, in terms of obviously, like I said, about delayed gratification, being able to have a plan and put some stuff away, man. Also, the average savings in the UK by age, obviously under 25, still young, still got a lot of time. And then obviously that's when it starts getting to the millennial and Gen Z age, between the 25 to 35 age range. And it's not that far off, 25 to 34, from 35 to 44 age range, And then obviously above 55, that's when you're looking at the baby boomers. And yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, the average savings amount for people in the UK between the 25 to 35 age. But that's the age groups where people can start kicking on. But they do say you don't hit your financial stride generally as a man, if, you're a man watching this, till when you get to like 50s. So once one can put some plans in place, there's still time. And obviously, being able to have that kind of understanding to know that they say this is the average, but when you start getting to a certain point, there's ways to look at age group and life and say, look, your time is what counts, not about someone else's time. Being able to have your own plan and your own provision and your own vision is key. I thought I'll shed a light on that, show young people, show different people at different stages of their life, so they're able to see what is possible. So people are able to see it, that look, you may be in a certain position right now. Once you can get some income at a certain rate and try and improve it over time, then you can start putting into savings. And then obviously, if you want to put it into investments or savings accounts and trading accounts, then hey, you've got that option. It'll be interesting to find out what people think. What do people think about being able to save, and how are they saving? Let me know though. Let me know.